All right, so to go through the last couple parts of our book, chapters 20 and 29 really take us to the ending of sort of what to do with your work. This week, we are going to focus on sharing some of our formal prompts with each other. Chapter 28 talks about the poetry workshop. And if you've ever been, and this is a fun little infographic to kind of, I'll zoom in here, start us off the chapter. If you've ever been in any sort of writing class before, literature class, I know you've done a great deal of writing workshops. The same goes for poetry. The idea, when you read through this chapter, that whether you're doing writing workshops in class and sharing your work, or you continue to go on where a lot of people form communities outside the classroom, in their own sort of respects, where they do workshops with their own writing groups, go to conferences, attend grad school programs, whatever it might be. The idea is that everybody sort of wants that opportunity to make themselves better and to make their writing better and to be heard a little bit more and to really form a community, and that's really important. So that's what these workshops are really important for. It's not just to pass around a piece of paper, it's not just to say chime in and tell me if you like or not like my work. No, it's to really fine tune your craft and to get expert and outside advice and perspective, because sometimes we can only see what's on the page, and therefore we need some outside perspective to help that. Um, whether or not you take every piece of advice that's given to you, you don't have to, but it's really important to be mindful and just open to responses, open to comments, open to feedback. And sometimes that feedback is good, and sometimes maybe it gives you some ideas or a sense of where you need to work on a little bit more. So I love these different areas and arenas that are helpful for you to get feedback and for you to listen and kind of take in. This is very true. They can be confusing, frustrating, discouraging because, of course, someone reading your work, it's just their opinion. Everyone's opinions are different. They talk about different workshops on here. He has like the A Murder Incorporated workshop, or neither a workshop in which there's no only praise, nor is there which there's only criticism is likely to be helpful. So having sort of a more well-rounded, these are often found in graduate writing programs where everyone's so ambitious that, no one's really enjoying what they're doing. There's a fun poem kind of about that that's included in here. In Emily Dickinson Attends a Writing Workshop by Jane Rutherford Brown, that's the little opening at the section here. Um, that's a little overkill of how going through a poem should be, but sometimes when you do see that good poets often break all the rules, and that's okay here and there, and that's okay when it works. It is good to be open to hearing and looking at the opinions of others, because ultimately it's just going to make you a better writer. So he talks about other different types of workshops that sometimes all the poetry is just praised, and while praise is lovely, it doesn't always help us make our poems better. He talks about how to choose a workshop. So if it was something that you wanted to continue on outside of school, there's some great resources in this area. I know in your areas especially, where locally you can meet up with other people. What I really love too is plenty of online groups to also help with this. So online can really be your friend for that. And of course, if you ever think you have more of a demand, more of interest, there's lots of graduate programs and conferences and making your own writing workshops. But really, I think using all the resources that are both online and that you have within your classes is a great place for you to kind of start with that. And the final chapter is getting your poems into the world. So, should this be something that you want to do, maybe we will do it for the last week. As much as writing can be a private matter, it can be really wonderful to share your writing outside of a class or a writing group for other people. So, especially if you want to reach a bigger audience, reach a specific type of audience, anything like that, and also maybe to possibly make a career out of it, the best way to do that is to get your work into print, whether that be physical print or digital print online too. Kawat talks about a bunch of different places on here. A lot of these are going to be very recognizable names to you. yes, it is very harsh and at times very, very competitive, and you will get many rejections sometimes on works that you thought were very good. But the idea is to never give up, to keep very much going forth and sending out your work, especially if it's something that you believe in and you're really passionate about too. So the good thing is that there's lots of different places where you can find your niche, you can find an audience, you can get someone and start off small to read your work and then work up to some bigger publishing places. Especially when you know what types of poetry or what types of other fiction or nonfiction, whatever you're working at, you can target your audience a little bit more. Some other good tools that he mentions here talks about the Poets Market and the Directory of Poetry Publishers. These are really good books that can give you lots of good resources for publishing poetry, but equally as well, there's lots of good online resources that you can take a look at for this week, which I hope you are. The other thing to remember is thinking about how to format your submission. So pretty much everything now, this is a little outdated. I can't tell you if you send something with a stamp, you're going to get a good response back. It might get lost. However, replacing the stamp, replacing the mail is email and what we call Submittable. Submittable is an online platform to submitting your pieces of writing. Most journals that contain different types of writing or magazines or anything like that will either use Submittable or have a direct contact email that you want to submit. It's very important to read the directions because if you don't, there's no guarantee they will find your work and to read it. Depending on where you're submitting, you might be held to a certain number of pages, especially with poetry, only because they can't read a 35 poem manuscript unless they are calling for that. So 3 to 7 pages of work typically seems to be about the right amount. Yes, you might encounter and probably will encounter rejections, but that's okay. Sometimes really good places where you submit your work will be kind enough and able enough if they have enough people to explain maybe why your work wasn't a good fit there or offer some advice on how to make your work perhaps a little bit better. That's always really nice, but I can't say that always happens. Please don't get discouraged, whether you're writing poetry or any different types of poetry. Please don't get discouraged kind of doing that too. So that's another part as I'm messing with my screens here so you can zoom in a little bit more. Practice being rejected. Rejection's never easy, but it kind of is par on if you want to make writing a part of your life, really. Any type of writing. You will not get rich quick with poetry or any other writers. You will, it even took Stephen King a while. It took a lot of these other poets a long time. It took Maya Angelou a while too. Vanity publications, we try to avoid these. I'll explain a little bit more of those when I give some of the examples. Um, you know, they advertise in newspaper, popular magazines, and say they're looking for new things, but we never want to inquire with anything paying these big prices. Publishing books of poems is something that people end up doing and putting together a collection. That's a really nice way. There's a lot of small presses that do this. These are great ways to get your poems out there and kind of known as well. And typically they vary in terms of length. Some might be called chapbooks because they're very well differently arranged. They're stapled or sewn. Very, very experimental kind of with that. And of course, some of the best places to go to, such as Poetry and Writers and some other magazines, are very, very helpful that I'm going to link to and talk about in our resources. People, of course, self-publish. Walt Whitman self-published. There's lots of self-publishing platforms now online, like Amazon has one of its own and some other places. And my favorite things to do, of course, is to learn more about poetry through poetry readings, through university and college sponsor events, through coffee houses, through bookstores that have events. There's many really cool ones that are very close to you at school that I hope maybe when you're back and you can take sort of advantage of, or even in your areas at home. Now it's very brief, but we're gonna, the idea is just to give you the resources so that if it's something you do want to submit to, you'll have the tools and the capabilities to do that. And most especially, have fun with it. It's really fun to sort of very much do all these things and get your work out there and feel like a professional writer and feel like you're making an impact in your own writing life and trying especially to reach that message, those words, you're very much your proudest moments out to an audience.